Hey, curious minds, ever wondered how doctors tested for pregnancy before modern test kits? No plastic sticks, no digital readouts, no quiet bathrooms where you nervously wait for 2 pink lines. Imagine instead being told you're pregnant, based on how a frog reacts to your urine. Yes, a frog. A living, breathing amphibian becoming the unlikely centerpiece of one of the strangest, most fascinating medical chapters in history. This isn't fiction. This is a true story from just under a century ago, when science took a wild leap forward and ended up in a pond. To understand how this came to be, let's first jump back to a time before home pregnancy tests existed. A time when medical technology was still young, and the mysteries of the female body were poorly understood even by professionals in white coats. In the early 1900s, pregnancy was mostly confirmed through symptoms and intuition. Missed periods, nausea, mood swings, these were the main clues. But these signs weren't definitive. Many illnesses could mimic pregnancy. Women needed answers, especially when decisions around work, marriage, or even legal rights hinged on the presence or absence of a fetus. And in some cases, women desperately wanted to conceal a pregnancy or prove one existed, depending on the circumstances. Doctors were left guessing, and mistakes were common. So, the medical community turned to science. Researchers began asking, is there something chemical, a molecule, a hormone, anything that could reveal pregnancy with certainty? The answer turned out to be yes. But finding that something and figuring out how to detect it would take a few unexpected detours. One of the biggest discoveries was the hormone human chorionic gonadotropin, or HCG. This hormone is produced in large amounts shortly after a fertilized egg implants in the uterus. Today, it's what modern pregnancy tests look for. But back then, there were no dipsticks or instant analyzers to detect it. Scientists didn't even know what HCG was yet. All they knew was that pregnant women's urine seemed to carry some mysterious signal that affected the biology of animals in strange ways. And that brings us to the frogs. In 1927, German scientists Selma Aschheim and Bernhard Zondek developed one of the first biological pregnancy tests. Their method: inject a woman's urine into an immature female mouse. If the woman was pregnant, her urine would contain enough hormonal activity to stimulate the mouse's ovaries, causing them to mature or produce tiny follicles within a few days. It worked, but it wasn't exactly convenient. You needed mice, syringes, and a lot of waiting. Plus, you had to dissect the mouse afterward to check the ovaries, so the test wasn't repeatable, and it certainly wasn't friendly to the mice. Other scientists tried similar tests with rabbits. The phrase, "the rabbit died," even became a euphemism for a positive result, even though, to be clear, the rabbit always died, because dissection was required regardless of whether the woman was pregnant. The test result had more to do with what was found inside than whether the rabbit lived or died. But all this was about to change, thanks to a young South African scientist named Lancelot Hogben. Hogben was not your typical medical researcher. He was eccentric, outspoken, and obsessed with challenging norms. His interests spanned from genetics to endocrinology to social policy. But one of his peculiar fascinations was with a particular species of amphibian, the African clawed frog, also known as Xenopus laevis. This odd-looking creature might seem unremarkable, smooth, slippery, with webbed feet and claws. But Hogben noticed something fascinating about it. When he injected a female xenopus with certain hormones extracted from the human pituitary gland, the frog laid eggs. Lots of them. This sparked an idea. If frog ovulation could be triggered by human hormones, then maybe the same thing would happen if you injected the frog with the urine of a pregnant woman. He tested it. It worked. It worked so well that it revolutionized pregnancy testing for decades. Unlike mice or rabbits, the frog didn't need to be dissected. You could use the same frog over and over again. Just inject a bit of urine under its skin, typically in the dorsal lymph sac, and if the woman was pregnant, the frog would lay eggs within 8 to 12 hours. Simple, cheap, accurate, and in an odd way, humane, at least compared to killing a dozen lab animals for every test. This new method quickly spread. By the 1930s and 1940s, laboratories across Europe and North America were ordering shipments of African clawed frogs. Special breeding farms were set up. Medical supply companies advertised them in catalogues. One British lab reportedly kept over 6,000 frogs in service. These frogs had passports. They traveled in boxes. They were shipped by train, by sea, and by air, all to help answer one burning question: is she pregnant? The process became known as the Hogben test, though it was often simply called the frog test. Doctors or hospitals would send a urine sample to a specialized lab where the frogs were kept in tanks. A technician would inject the urine into the frog and wait overnight. If eggs were laid, the result was positive. If nothing happened, the woman was probably not pregnant. The test was around 98% accurate. Not bad, considering this was the 1930s and 40s. And for many years, it was the best option available. The frogs quietly did their jobs, behind the scenes of hospitals, research centers, and maternity wards. But the story doesn't end there. You see, Xenopus laevis isn't native to most of the world. It's native to sub-Saharan Africa. That means millions of these frogs had to be captured or bred in captivity and then exported to laboratories worldwide. It was a booming business, but it also had consequences, ecological ones. When the era of frog-based pregnancy testing finally ended in the 1960s and 70s, thanks to new immunoassays that could detect HCG directly in urine without animals, many labs simply released their frogs into local rivers and lakes. It seemed harmless at the time, but these frogs were tough survivors. They carried a skin fungus called Batrachochytrium dendrobatidis, or BD for short. BD turned out to be devastating to native amphibian species. It's now considered one of the most destructive wildlife pathogens on the planet, linked to the extinction or decline of hundreds of frog species globally. So in a strange twist, a test designed to help bring new human life into the world ended up contributing to the decline of countless frog lives elsewhere. Even today, wild populations of Xenopus laevis exist in California, the UK, Chile, and other regions far from their African home, all descendants of medical test subjects that once predicted pregnancies decades ago. Looking back, it sounds almost absurd. A woman pees in a jar, her doctor sends it to a lab, and a frog in a tank is given. A tiny injection. The next morning, the presence or absence of frog eggs tells you whether her life is about to change forever. It's a story that sounds like folklore, but it's backed by science, soaked in history, and laced with more than a little irony. It's a reminder of how far medicine has come, and how creative, even strange, the path of discovery can be. From mice and rabbits to frogs and hormones, The road to the modern pregnancy test took unexpected leaps, both literal and scientific. And somehow, in the middle of it all, a little green amphibian with webbed feet and no vocal cords became the gatekeeper of new life, one egg-laying test at a time. By the late 1930s, the frog test had spread like wildfire through the medical world. Doctors and hospitals now had something astonishing at their disposal: a fast, reusable, fairly accurate pregnancy test that relied on a small, strange amphibian from Africa. The medical journals praised it. Laboratory supply companies couldn't keep up with the demand, and the African clawed frog became one of the most widely exported animals in the world, all because it could respond to the hormones in human urine. And the frogs, they were everywhere. In a lab in London, frogs were kept in stacked glass tanks, each animal numbered and tagged. Technicians wearing white coats would arrive early, check the previous day's injected frogs for eggs, record results in neat columns, rinse the animals and prepare them for the next sample. The frogs were quiet co-workers. They didn't complain, didn't bite, didn't need anesthesia. All they needed was clean water, occasional feeding, and a few hours to respond to their injections. A technician could run dozens of tests in a single day. But while the process may sound clinical and efficient, the reality was often stranger. In some cases, doctors kept frogs in their own offices. A general practitioner in rural England reportedly kept a frog tank behind his desk. Whenever a local woman suspected she might be pregnant, she'd bring in a sample, and the doctor would excuse himself for a moment, disappearing into the back room to consult the frog. By morning, he'd have his answer. Other physicians kept them in basements or garages. A few wealthy patients even had personal frog testers in private clinics. But it wasn't all so simple. Caring for dozens or hundreds of frogs wasn't always easy. If water quality slipped, frogs could get sick. If temperatures dropped, their response times slowed. Some frogs simply refused to ovulate, no matter how much hormone you gave them. And some labs cut corners, overworking the same frogs, skipping proper sanitation, or mixing up samples. In one infamous case, a clinic accidentally injected the wrong urine sample into a group of frogs and sent the wrong pregnancy results to 2 women. One woman was devastated by a false negative. The other made life-changing plans based on a false positive. There were ethical concerns too, though not in the way we'd think today. Few people worried about the welfare of the frogs. They weren't beloved pets or protected wildlife, they were lab equipment. But people did worry about privacy, about the accuracy of results, and about the growing social implications of having a scientific method to prove or disprove pregnancy. For some women, this test offered power, proof of pregnancy in a world where doctors often dismissed female intuition. But for others, it was terrifying. It removed plausible deniability. You couldn't claim to be pregnant or not if a frog had spoken. And sometimes those frogs became witnesses in scandalous court cases. In 1942, a woman in Germany accused a prominent official of getting her pregnant and then abandoning her. The man denied everything. There were no letters, no photos, no witnesses, just her word against his. Until she went to a doctor, took the frog test, and came back with a positive result. The doctor testified. The frog had laid eggs, and the court ruled in her favor. Newspapers sensationalized the story, pregnancy confirmed by frog. From that moment, the frog test gained almost mythical status, an oracle of reproductive truth. In America, it was no different. The test was adopted in research hospitals and private labs, particularly in large cities like New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. Wealthy women often had access to the test through private doctors. Poorer women, meanwhile, might wait in long lines at free clinics, hoping for an answer. In both cases, the sample was the same: a small glass bottle of urine, carefully labeled, often delivered in a paper bag. The frog did the rest. The African clawed frog, once an obscure species in distant wetlands, had now become a central figure in one of the most intimate aspects of human life. It was a biological translator, turning the chemical language of hormones into something visible, undeniable: eggs, dozens, sometimes hundreds. Tiny white spheres clinging to the glass of the tank, a message from the body, decoded by an animal that had never seen a human baby in its life. But as demand soared, so did the scale of frog farming. In South Africa, businesses sprang up around collecting and breeding Xenopus laevis. Locals would catch them in rivers and lakes, sell them in buckets, and deliver them to holding centers where they were sorted, sexed, and prepared for shipment. Frogs were packed into damp crates, given just enough water to keep them alive, and shipped thousands of miles to labs in Europe, North America, and even Asia. Mortality was high, conditions were crude, but the profits were irresistible. Some breeders figured out how to raise the frogs in captivity, no longer relying on wild populations. But this too came with complications. Frogs bred in tanks were often less robust, more sensitive to environmental changes, and sometimes less responsive to the pregnancy hormone. Labs began keeping detailed records of each frog's performance. Some frogs were champions, delivering reliable ovulation responses for years. Others were retired early or died from overuse, and while most frogs lived anonymous lives in laboratory tanks, a few earned fame. In one Chicago hospital, a frog named Matilda became a sort of mascot. She'd worked for nearly 7 years, laying eggs more consistently than any other frog in the facility. Nurses gave her treats. Doctors joked that she deserved a pension. When Matilda finally died, they buried her in the hospital garden with a tiny stone marked with her ID tag, F01. But the golden age of the frog test wouldn't last forever. By the 1960s, science had caught up. Researchers discovered how to isolate HCG, the key hormone in pregnancy, from urine and blood. More importantly, they found ways to detect it chemically without relying on living creatures. Radioimmunoassays and enzyme-linked immunosorbent assays, ELISA, began replacing the frog test. These new methods were faster, more precise, and didn't involve live animals. By the early 1970s, the first home pregnancy tests were in development. Compact, affordable kits that anyone could use in the privacy of their own home. The end was near for the frog. Labs began phasing out their amphibian testers. Some were euthanized. Others were given away to universities or aquariums, but many, too many, were simply released into rivers, lakes, streams, into places where they didn't belong. And here, another unexpected twist began. The African clawed frog was not a shy creature. It was highly adaptable, resistant to many local diseases, and a voracious predator of native insects, fish eggs, and even other amphibians. Worse, many of these lab frogs carried a microscopic fungus, Batrachochytrium dendrobatidis, which didn't harm them, but proved lethal to native frog species. As these released frogs spread, so did the fungus. In California, native frogs began dying off in large numbers. In Australia, South America, and parts of Europe, the same pattern emerged. Entire species vanished within a few years. Conservationists were stunned. The frog that once helped detect life in humans was now helping erase it in the wild. Today, Xenopus levis is considered an invasive species in several countries. Scientists still use it in labs, mostly for developmental research. It's a good model organism for studying embryology, but its days as a pregnancy test are long gone. The modern test is faster, simpler, and doesn't need to be fed, and yet the legacy of the frog remains. It's there in every box of home pregnancy tests on a drugstore shelf. It's in every anxious glance at a plastic window, waiting for that second line to appear. Behind the convenience of today's technology is a strange and wondrous story about biology, innovation, and the surprising way humans once leaned on the natural world to answer one of life's oldest questions. And so, the next time someone holds a little plastic stick and waits for results, they may not realize it, but they owe a small, strange debt to a frog from far away, who once sat in a tank and laid a quiet truth, one egg at a time. Even as the frog test quietly began to fade from laboratories, its presence lingered in memory, folklore, and in the cultural imagination. It had done something extraordinary, turned an invisible event inside the human body into a public result, declared by an animal that couldn't speak, couldn't think, and yet somehow could know. And while science was moving forward with chemical assays, antibodies, and rapid diagnostics, the decades of frog-based pregnancy testing had left behind more than just invasive species and scientific data. It had also shaped how society talked about reproduction, responsibility, and the female body. In the 1940s and 50s, there was still tremendous stigma around pregnancy outside of marriage. For many women, particularly in conservative societies, the ability to confirm or deny a pregnancy was dangerous territory. A positive result could mean shame, banishment, or even institutionalization. A negative result might come with relief or disbelief. That little frog in the lab wasn't just responding to biology. It was participating in secrets, in scandals, in decisions that changed lives. Some women used the frog test to protect themselves. One British teenager, in a case recorded by a mid-century clinic, had been accused by her family of being pregnant. Her body had changed, her period was late, and her father demanded answers. She was sent to the doctor. The frog test was done. Negative. The girl was spared weeks of emotional torment and was later diagnosed with a hormonal imbalance unrelated to pregnancy. That frog had saved her from being sent away to a home for wayward girls. But in other cases, the test sealed a woman's fate. In 1951 in Paris, a young housemaid took a frog test in secret. The result came back positive. She was terrified, not of the pregnancy itself, but of the consequences. She had no family nearby, no partner willing to acknowledge the child, and no money. Abortion was illegal and dangerous. She sought help from a black market provider and died days later from sepsis. Her death made the local papers. What few people realized was that the entire chain of events had begun with a small amphibian in a glass box who had laid a few dozen translucent eggs. The frog test, for all its scientific marvel, was not neutral. It played a role in the moral economy of its time. It made pregnancy something that could be proven with evidence. That shifted power. Husbands could demand proof. Employers could require it. Courts could use it. The test became a kind of biological lie detector. In the United States, rumors began to swirl around celebrities. A famous Hollywood actress was said to have sent a sample to a private lab under a fake name. The frog had laid eggs, and within days, gossip columnists were whispering about a mystery pregnancy. The actress denied everything, but the whispers didn't stop. She later left the country to rest for several months and returned thinner, pale, and noticeably more guarded. The frog had spoken, and the world had listened. But it wasn't just about medicine and morality. The frog test had a strange way of inspiring the public imagination. Children's books in the 1950s featured talking frogs that knew secrets. Newspaper cartoons joked about puddle prophets and test frogs in white lab coats. A few enterprising novelty shops even sold glass frog figurines labeled Certified Pregnancy Predictor. It became a pop culture joke. But for people in the know, it was also a wink towards something real. Meanwhile, the scientists who had helped pioneer this method were watching their work evolve and vanish. Lancelot Hogben, the eccentric South African who had first made the frog famous, had long since moved on. He'd grown critical of how the test was commercialized and industrialized. In his later writings, he described it as a useful accident, never meant to become the cornerstone of diagnostic medicine. Still, he acknowledged its impact and its strangeness. "Of all the legacies I leave," he once joked to a colleague, "I suppose being remembered as the man who got frogs to ovulate for science isn't the worst." Hogben's frog wasn't just a test subject, it became an icon of an era, a symbol of how desperation, ingenuity, and biology could collide in surprising ways. And yet, as science continued to progress, the frog's reign became a curious footnote. By the 1970s, home pregnancy tests hit pharmacy shelves for the first time. These kits were primitive compared to today's sleek designs, but they worked. They came with droppers, vials, test tubes, and instruction manuals. The process took hours, but the convenience and privacy were revolutionary. A woman no longer had to visit a clinic or send a sample across town. She could find out, alone, in her own bathroom, what only a frog could have told her a decade earlier. This democratization of pregnancy testing was, in some ways, the final chapter of the frog's saga. No longer were women beholden to labs, doctors, or amphibians. The power of knowledge had been transferred, quietly, efficiently, and with plastic. And yet, even as frogs disappeared from labs, they remained embedded in scientific memory. At the University of Cambridge, a research archive still holds handwritten frog test logs from the 1940s, complete with names, dates, and sometimes little drawings of frog tanks in the margins. One note reads, "Patient on a 437, urine cloudy, frog unresponsive, repeat test tomorrow." Another, more poetic, "Frog laid 117 eggs, positive. Patient wept." There is something haunting about those entries. Each line represents a human life at a crossroads. A young woman trying to make sense of her body. A man wondering if he'd become a father. A family on the edge of transformation. And in the middle of it all, a small, voiceless animal playing the role of oracle. Some of the frogs were even given names in lab records. Lucille was noted as especially responsive. Hannibal was retired after 79 tests. One frog, nicknamed Churchill because of his broad face and stern expression, was reported to have never once failed to ovulate on a positive sample. These frogs were more than tools. They were quiet co-workers in a human drama that never really stopped unfolding. Even today, some reproductive biologists look back at the frog test with a mix of nostalgia and amazement. It was, by all accounts, biologically brilliant, an elegant proof of how tightly human and animal systems could mirror each other. The frog didn't need to know what pregnancy was. It only needed to respond to the hormones of it. And that was enough. But there are still odd echoes of this strange chapter, even in our modern world. In a remote clinic in rural India, a doctor reportedly continued using the frog test well into the early 2000s, long after it had disappeared elsewhere. With limited lab supplies and no access to modern pregnancy kits, he relied on a small colony of frogs he'd kept alive for decades. A traveling journalist wrote about the visit. The frogs live behind his clinic, in ceramic bathtubs covered with mesh. Every evening he injects one with urine, waits for dawn, and checks for eggs. His accuracy rate, he claims, is still above 90%. And in some labs today, Xenopus levis is still used, not for pregnancy, but for embryological studies. Their eggs are large, transparent, and ideal for observing the early stages of development. In a strange way, they're still helping us understand life, just not by predicting it anymore. For decades, the frog test shaped not just medicine, but emotion. It sat at the intersection of hope, fear, science, and secrecy. And while we may never return to an age where a woman's future is decided by the behavior of an amphibian, the story remains unforgettable. Because once upon a time, to find out if you were pregnant, you didn't need a doctor to read your urine, or a machine to detect a hormone. You just needed a frog, a live one, willing to lend its body to your question and offer its answer. One slippery, silent egg at a time. Long after the last frog was used to confirm a pregnancy in a hospital lab, their legacy was still unfolding, not in test results or hospital records, but in lakes, rivers, and marshes around the world. As the frog test declined, thousands of Xenopus laevis were no longer needed. And as it so often happens when humans are done with animals they once depended on, many were simply released. No one thought twice about it. In labs from Los Angeles to Berlin, from Tokyo to Buenos Aires, technicians simply opened tanks, carried plastic buckets to nearby ponds or drainage ditches, and let the frogs go. It felt harmless, humane even. After years in sterile glass enclosures, the frogs were free again. What harm could a few aquatic frogs possibly do? The answer, it turned out, was quite a lot. The African clawed frog, native to the rivers and wetlands of sub-Saharan Africa, was built for survival. Its body could tolerate a wide range of temperatures. It could live in murky or brackish water. It ate anything it could swallow: worms, insects, fish eggs, smaller frogs. It reproduced prolifically. It buried itself in mud during droughts, emerging months later when water returned. It was, in essence, a biological tank, rugged, hungry, and endlessly adaptable. Once released into new ecosystems, it did what it had always done: thrived. In California, they spread rapidly through irrigation canals and reservoirs. In Chile, they established breeding populations in high-altitude lakes. In France and Italy, they found warm, spring-fed ponds ideal for reproduction. In Japan, isolated reports of wild populations began appearing by the 1980s. They didn't just survive, they multiplied, but the real damage wasn't their appetite or their numbers. It was something far more invisible and far more deadly. You see, Xenopus laevis carries a microscopic fungus on its skin, Batrachochytrium dendrobatidis, or BD for short. In their native African habitats, this fungus is harmless. The frogs coexist with it, but in other parts of the world, BD acts like a plague. It infects the skin of native amphibians, disrupting their ability to absorb water and electrolytes. Many die within days. Entire populations collapse. BD is now considered one of the most destructive pathogens in wildlife history, and the African clawed frog, thanks to its global career as a pregnancy test, helped spread it. By the early 2000s, biologists began noticing catastrophic declines in frog populations around the world. Species that had thrived for millennia began disappearing in just a few seasons. From the golden toad in Costa Rica to mountain frogs in Australia, the pattern was the same: sudden die-offs, infected skin, and ecosystems left eerily silent. Researchers traced the outbreaks and found a disturbing pattern. In regions where Xenopus laevis had been introduced, BD soon followed. The frogs themselves remained unaffected, silent carriers. But everything else began to vanish. Native frogs, salamanders, and newts dropped in number, and with them, insects surged. Algae bloomed, snakes lost prey, birds migrated elsewhere. The ripple effect spiraled outward. It was the ecological version of lighting a match in a dry forest and walking away. Ironically, the very quality that made Xenopus laevis so valuable in labs, its biological compatibility with humans, was the same thing that made it dangerous in the wild. It bridged ecosystems. It bypassed natural barriers. It introduced foreign pathogens without any of the checks and balances evolution had once enforced. By the time scientists understood the scale of what had happened, it was too late to undo it. In California, wildlife officials tried to remove wild Xenopus populations. Traps were laid, draining projects began, but the frogs were elusive. They moved at night. They burrowed in dry seasons, and they reproduced quickly. In France, similar efforts failed. The frogs kept showing up in new locations, sometimes miles from the last known population. Their tadpoles hitched rides in bird feathers, irrigation, pumps, and aquarium shipments. Meanwhile, conservationists scrambled to save native species. Some collected the last few dozen individuals from vulnerable populations and began captive breeding programs. Others worked to map the global spread of BD, hoping to create containment zones. But as climate change accelerated, the fungus spread even faster. Warmer temperatures and increased rainfall created perfect breeding conditions. Today, over 500 amphibian species have experienced severe declines due to BD. Over 90 are believed to be extinct, and while Xenopus laevis isn't the only culprit, BD likely spread through other means too. It is one of the most infamous carriers. A frog once celebrated for helping humans confirm life had, ironically, helped bring about one of the largest mass extinctions in modern history. It's a hard truth to swallow. We like our scientific advances neat, clean, linear, discovery, application, benefit. But the frog test's legacy reminds us that science is rarely isolated from its consequences. A breakthrough in one room may cause collapse in another. A pregnancy confirmed in London might ripple outward until a species disappears. In Peru, biology doesn't obey our categories, and yet even now, Xenopus laevis still thrives, in labs, in the wild, and in our research. Modern scientists use it to study embryogenesis, cancer and gene expression. Its genome has been mapped. Its eggs are injected with mRNA. It is still, ironically, one of the most useful animals in experimental biology, and in this new role, it poses no direct danger. It is housed in secure labs, sterilized, monitored. But its history is never far away. At the Smithsonian National Zoo in Washington, D.C., a quiet terrarium holds several African clawed frogs for educational display. The sign tells their story, not just their biology, but their role in medicine. Once used to detect pregnancy in humans, it reads, "This frog helped shape modern diagnostics. It also played a part in one of the most unexpected ecological crises of our time." Visitors stop. Children press their noses to the glass. The frogs float motionless like stone statues in green water. No one hears their history, but it's there, in every ripple. Elsewhere, environmental historians have begun using the frog test as a case study, a lesson in unintended consequences. Courses at universities now ask students to trace the life of a single frog, born in South Africa, shipped to Berlin in 1941, used in 300 pregnancy tests released in 1953, part of an invasive population by 1960, and linked to fungal spread by 1990. It is a biography, yes, but also a warning, because the story of the frog test isn't just about pregnancy or science or even amphibians. It's about how tightly human lives are interwoven with the non-human world, and how even the smallest decisions can echo across decades, continents, and species. We used frogs to find answers. We just didn't ask the right questions, and perhaps most hauntingly, we didn't stay to listen once the test was done. But the frogs remember. Not in thought or emotion, but in movement, in survival, in presence, in the quiet way they now lurk, in foreign wetlands, outliving the laboratories, the doctors, the patients, and even the science that once celebrated them. Because long after we stopped asking them to tell us if life had begun, they kept living on their own terms in places we never meant them to go, in waters we can no longer clean. Before the African clawed frog became the star of pregnancy testing, humanity had already been trying to unlock the mystery of conception through a variety of curious and sometimes bizarre methods. From plants to animals, these early tests reflected the desire and desperation of people throughout history to confirm pregnancy long before modern science provided clear answers. Some of these tests were based on superstition, some on emerging biological knowledge, and others on pure trial and error. One of the earliest recorded methods comes from ancient Egypt, around 1350 BCE. Women were instructed to urinate on barley and wheat seeds. If the barley sprouted first, it was said the woman was pregnant with a male child. If the wheat sprouted first, it was a girl. No growth indicated no pregnancy. While this method might sound strange, modern science found that women's urine during pregnancy contains hormones that can affect seed germination rates, though not reliably enough to be considered an accurate test. Still, for thousands of years, this practice was passed down, sometimes used by midwives or women at home as a form of early biological intuition. In medieval Europe, pregnancy was often detected by taste tests or smell tests. Medieval doctors sometimes claimed that the urine of pregnant women had a sweeter scent or a particular flavor. Obviously, these methods were highly subjective and sometimes dangerous. Tasting urine could lead to infections or poisoning. Yet these folk practices persisted well into the Renaissance era. By the 18th century, animal-based tests began to take center stage, foreshadowing the famous frog test. Rabbits and mice were used in what was called the rabbit test. In this test, a woman's urine was injected into a female rabbit, and after several days, the rabbit's ovaries would be examined for signs of ovulation or follicle development. A positive reaction supposedly indicated pregnancy. This test was widely used in the early 20th century, before the advent of biochemical assays. While more invasive to animals, it was one of the more accurate methods available before modern hormonal tests. The phrase, "the rabbit died," became a euphemism for a positive pregnancy test, even though the rabbit actually was euthanized and dissected to confirm the result. This dark origin story of a common phrase reveals how women often relied on these sometimes cruel animal experiments to get confirmation. The rabbit test was phased out by the 1960s as in vitro hormone assays became common, but it remains a cultural touchstone. Beyond rabbits, mice also served in pregnancy testing, notably in Britain, where the mouse test was developed in the 1930s. Like the frog test, urine from a woman suspected of being pregnant was injected into female mice, which were then observed for changes in their reproductive system. Though less famous, this method was part of the mosaic of animal-based diagnostics used before chemical tests became routine. In the early 20th century, another curious test involved frogs, related to the African clawed frog but different in species. In Europe, the common frog, Rana temporaria, was sometimes used for pregnancy testing by injecting urine and observing changes in the frog's ovaries. Though less sensitive than Xenopus laevis, these experiments reveal how the scientific community was experimenting with multiple amphibians. Meanwhile, herbal remedies and divinations continued alongside these scientific approaches. In traditional Chinese medicine, a woman's pulse, complexion, and even the shape of her abdomen were analyzed to diagnose pregnancy. Various herbal concoctions were given to confirm or even induce miscarriage. Similar practices were seen in indigenous communities around the world, where knowledge of plants and animals formed the core of reproductive health practices. One of the more amusing and less invasive methods, popular in some rural areas in the mid-20th century, was the soap test. Women would add a few drops of urine to a bowl of soap solution. If this soap foamed excessively or did not dissolve, it was believed to indicate pregnancy. This folk test was never scientifically validated, but was used due to its simplicity and the embarrassment or unavailability of medical clinics. In Scandinavia, a folkloric test involved placing a ring on a string and suspending it over a pregnant woman's belly. If the ring swung in circles, the woman was pregnant. If it swung back and forth, she was not. This pendulum test was more about superstition and psychological comfort than biology, but it reflects how human beings have long sought physical signs of invisible processes. Throughout history, these tests served dual roles. They were both medical, diagnostics, and cultural rituals. They involved trust, hope, secrecy, and sometimes fear. The woman's community often played a key role, whether in preparing the test, interpreting results, or helping manage the consequences of pregnancy. It's fascinating to reflect on how far these methods were from today's home pregnancy kits. Small, plastic sticks that detect a single hormone, HCG, in minutes. Yet in their own time, these tests represented cutting-edge science or heartfelt attempts to understand the body. The history of pregnancy testing reveals something fundamental about human nature: the desire for certainty in a realm that has always been fraught with mystery and uncertainty. Pregnancy, after all, is more than biology. It's the beginning of a new life, a transformation of identity, and sometimes a social challenge. Whether it's a frog laying eggs, a rabbit's ovaries examined under a microscope, or seeds sprouting in the soil, these tests all symbolize a deep human yearning to grasp what is unseen. As science progressed, the shift from animal-based to chemical-based tests marked a move not only toward accuracy, but also ethics. The fate of countless frogs, rabbits, and mice became a consideration. The development of immunoassays and then home pregnancy kits reflected a changing relationship with animals, privacy, and women's autonomy. And yet, these early tests still capture our imagination. They remind us of a time when science and superstition blended, when animals played a vital role in medical discovery, and when the question, "Am I pregnant?" was answered by the oddest of partners, from plants to furry creatures to amphibians. The journey of pregnancy testing is, in many ways, the story of humanity's relationship with life itself, fragile, mysterious, and endlessly fascinating. For centuries, pregnancy testing was a patchwork of folklore, observation, and animal experiments. But the turning point, the moment when the mystery of pregnancy moved from superstition and crude biological tests to precise science, came with the discovery of hormones and advances in laboratory technology during the early 20th century. This revolution reshaped not only how pregnancy was detected, but also how medicine approached reproductive health, giving women more control and privacy than ever before. The key to this transformation was human chorionic gonadotropin, or HCG, a hormone produced shortly after conception by the developing placenta. Scientists first isolated HCG in the 1920s and 1930s, a breakthrough that revealed a biological signal unique to pregnancy. But recognizing its significance was only the beginning. Detecting HCG in a woman's urine or blood with accuracy and speed became the next great challenge. Early researchers were inspired by the animal tests already in use. They knew that the urine of pregnant women caused physiological changes in animals, but they wanted to find a chemical basis for these effects. HCG turned out to be the missing piece. When present in urine, it triggered reproductive responses in test animals. Understanding this connection opened the door to more refined diagnostic techniques. In the 1930s and 1940s, the rabbit and frog tests became more standardized as scientists learned to measure the ovarian responses of these animals after exposure to pregnant women's urine. But these tests were slow, invasive, and required the death of the animal. Medical practitioners and patients alike wished for faster, simpler, and less cruel methods. The real breakthrough came with immunology and biochemistry advances after World War II. Researchers developed ways to create antibodies that could specifically bind to HCG molecules, enabling the detection of the hormone in urine or blood without relying on animals. The creation of these antibodies paved the way for immunoassays, tests that could reveal the presence of HCG by producing a visible reaction. By the 1960s, the first radioimmunoassays were developed. These tests used radioactive labels to detect even tiny amounts of HCG with incredible precision. Though the process required specialized equipment and expertise, it marked a massive leap forward in accuracy and reliability. No longer did women need to wait days for animal tests or ambiguous signs. Pregnancy could be confirmed with a simple lab test in hours. Meanwhile, researchers also worked on making these tests accessible outside specialized labs. The dream was to create a test women could use at home, empowering them to discover pregnancy privately and on their own time. This goal required combining biochemistry with clever engineering and user-friendly design. In 1971, the first home pregnancy test kit was launched by a company called Organon, followed shortly by others. These early kits still relied on immunoassay principles, but used color changes on a test strip to indicate pregnancy, something anyone could interpret. Although these early kits were not as sensitive or convenient as modern ones, they represented a seismic shift in women's health and autonomy. Home testing liberated millions of women from the uncertainty and anxiety of waiting for doctor visits and lab results. It also transformed cultural attitudes toward pregnancy. Suddenly, pregnancy became a private matter, often discovered first in the quiet of one's home rather than a public clinic. This had profound effects on family dynamics, healthcare, and even politics surrounding reproductive rights. At the same time, the science behind pregnancy tests continued to improve. The sensitivity of kits increased dramatically over the decades. Modern digital tests can detect pregnancy as early as 6 days after conception, with results displayed in clear text like pregnant or not pregnant. Some even estimate how many weeks pregnant a woman is. The blend of molecular biology and technology has created tools once unimaginable. The story of HCG and its detection also catalyzed advances in other medical areas. Since HCG is structurally similar to other hormones, researchers applied immunoassay techniques to diagnose cancers, monitor fertility treatments, and detect hormone imbalances. Pregnancy testing became a gateway to a broader era of hormonal medicine, but the path wasn't without controversy. Early home pregnancy tests faced opposition from some medical professionals and social conservatives who feared that easy access might lead to increased abortions or less medical oversight. Others worried about false positives and negatives causing unnecessary stress. Over time, education and regulation improved, and home tests gained wide acceptance as safe, reliable, and empowering tools. Meanwhile, the environmental and ethical concerns raised by animal testing also fueled calls for alternative methods. Laboratories developed cell-based assays and synthetic antibodies, reducing reliance on animals. These innovations paralleled growing awareness of animal welfare in science, a movement that continues to influence research today. Looking back, it's striking how a simple biological molecule, HCG, revolutionized reproductive medicine. From the fog of ancient customs and frog tests emerged a modern scientific framework that gave women knowledge, control, and dignity. The ability to confirm pregnancy quickly and privately has had ripple effects in prenatal care, family planning, and public health. Today, pregnancy testing is taken for granted, embedded in our culture and healthcare systems. But behind every positive test lies a long history of human ingenuity, trial and error, and the intersection of biology and technology. It's a story about how understanding a single hormone transformed an intimate aspect of life for millions. Worldwide, the journey from the African clawed frog to the digital test strip is a testament to science's power and its responsibility. It reminds us that every advance carries complex legacies, ethical, environmental, and social, and it challenges us to keep asking how we can innovate with care. So next time you see a pregnancy test, remember, it is not just a piece of plastic, but the culmination of centuries of observation, animal lives, scientific discovery, and human hope. It is a symbol of life's persistence and humanity's quest to understand it. As pregnancy testing evolved from obscure animal experiments to accessible home kits, it reshaped more than just medicine. It transformed society. For generations, the confirmation of pregnancy had been entwined with rituals, secrecy, and sometimes shame. The introduction of reliable private tests gave women unprecedented control over one of the most personal aspects of their lives, influencing family dynamics, gender roles, and even legal rights. Before home pregnancy tests, discovering pregnancy often involved a mixture of guesswork, doctor visits, and community gossip. Many women only confirmed their condition after weeks or months, sometimes after visible physical changes or symptoms. This delay had profound implications. Decisions about healthcare, marriage, work, and social life were made under uncertainty or hidden from others. In some cases, women faced stigma or discrimination, especially if pregnancy occurred outside marriage. The arrival of home pregnancy tests in the 1970s changed this dynamic dramatically. Suddenly, women could learn about their pregnancies privately, days after a missed period. This ability offered a new kind of agency, allowing early decisions about prenatal care or family planning. It also shifted conversations within families, partners, parents, and friends by allowing women to control when and how to share the news. Stories from women during the early years of home tests reveal a mix of relief, joy, anxiety, and empowerment. Many describe holding the test in trembling hands, staring at the tiny window that would change their lives. For some, it was the first time they truly felt in charge of their reproductive destiny. Others faced difficult choices, grappling with emotions intensified by the immediacy of the result. This shift in pregnancy detection coincided with broader social changes, including the sexual revolution, women's liberation movements, and expanding access to contraception and abortion. Reliable pregnancy tests became tools in these cultural battles, symbols of women's right to know and decide. In the political arena, access to pregnancy testing became intertwined with debates over reproductive rights. Advocates argued that without the ability to confirm pregnancy early and privately, women were at a disadvantage in making informed choices about their bodies. Opponents sometimes sought to restrict access, citing moral or religious grounds. These conflicts continue in various forms today. The impact of pregnancy testing also reached healthcare providers. Doctors and midwives had to adapt to new realities, where women often came to appointments already knowing their pregnancy status. This changed the nature of consultations, prenatal care, and counseling. In some cases, it led to earlier detection of complications and better outcomes. Yet not all experiences were positive. Early home tests were not perfect. False positives and negatives caused distress. Some women felt isolated or overwhelmed by unexpected results. Others lacked access to tests due to cost or availability, highlighting inequalities in healthcare. Cultural differences also shaped how pregnancy testing was received. In some societies, public disclosure of pregnancy remained taboo, and women continued to rely on traditional methods or community support. In others, the test became a symbol of modernity and empowerment, celebrated in media and advertising. The commercialization of pregnancy tests introduced new challenges and opportunities. Companies competed to create faster, more sensitive, and easier-to-use products. Advertising campaigns targeted women's hopes, fears, and desires, sometimes reinforcing stereotypes, sometimes challenging them. The test became an icon in popular culture, appearing in movies, television, and literature as a dramatic plot device. Throughout this cultural evolution, the personal stories remained at the heart. From a teenager discovering an unplanned pregnancy to a couple eagerly awaiting confirmation after fertility treatments, the pregnancy test became a mirror reflecting the complexity of human life. Today, digital pregnancy tests offer clear results and even estimate gestational age, integrating technology and medicine seamlessly. Smartphone apps track cycles and test results, creating a digital ecosystem around reproductive health. While this offers convenience and connection, it also raises questions about privacy, data security, and the medicalization of personal experience. Reflecting on this journey, it's clear that pregnancy tests are more than diagnostic tools. They are social artifacts, shaped by and shaping the lives around them. They embody scientific progress and cultural values, hope and fear, knowledge and mystery. The history of pregnancy testing is ultimately a story about humanity's quest for certainty in a realm filled with uncertainty. It's about how we understand life's beginnings, how we confront the unknown, and how we navigate the deeply personal alongside the public. As science continues to advance, as new technologies emerge, the pregnancy test will no doubt continue to evolve. But its core remains the same, a small window into one of life's greatest mysteries, held in the hands of millions every year, carrying with it the power to change everything. The evolution of pregnancy testing is a story that weaves together strands of science, technology, culture, and human emotion, revealing how a simple question, "Am I pregnant?" has been at the crossroads of some of the most profound changes in medicine and society. While earlier parts of this tale have explored the origins of pregnancy tests, from ancient seeds and animal experiments to the dawn of modern immunoassays, the story grows even more complex and fascinating when we examine how the rapid technological advancements of the late 20th and early 21st centuries transformed the test from a clinical tool into a cultural phenomenon embedded deeply into everyday life. By the late 20th century, pregnancy testing had undergone a metamorphosis. The test, once dependent on live animals like frogs or rabbits and accessible only through medical professionals, had become a consumer product, an item that could be purchased over the counter and used privately at home. This shift not only changed the logistics of pregnancy detection, but also the very nature of how people thought about and experienced pregnancy. The rise of the home pregnancy test, HPT, coincided with a broader wave of technological innovation. Advances in immunology and biotechnology allowed manufacturers to create increasingly sensitive assays that could detect ever smaller amounts of HCG, reducing the time between conception and confirmation. Early tests required a woman to wait days after a missed period, but by the 1980s and 90s, some tests could detect pregnancy within just a few days after ovulation, sometimes even before a period was due. This ultra-sensitivity, however, came with its own complications. The detection of very low HCG levels raised questions about the interpretation of results. For example, chemical pregnancies, early miscarriages occurring shortly after implantation, could be detected, sometimes leading to emotional confusion. For women who saw a positive result followed by bleeding, the technology outpaced the social and medical frameworks needed to fully support women through such experiences, highlighting the complexity of progress. Moreover, as pregnancy tests became more widely used, issues of accessibility and equity emerged. While the tests were available in many developed countries at affordable prices, millions of women around the world still lacked access to reliable pregnancy testing. In low-resource settings, the cost of tests, supply chain problems, and lack of healthcare infrastructure meant many women had to rely on traditional methods or delayed diagnosis. This gap underscored a persistent global health disparity and motivated initiatives to develop cheap, easy-to-use tests for underserved communities. Organizations like the World Health Organization and various NGOs partnered with manufacturers to distribute low-cost pregnancy tests and educate women about reproductive health. This effort was part of a larger movement to improve maternal health, reduce maternal mortality, and empower women globally. The simple act of confirming pregnancy early was recognized as a critical step in accessing prenatal care and family planning services. While technological improvements in test sensitivity and accessibility were crucial, the design and usability of pregnancy tests also evolved. Early home tests were somewhat clunky, requiring women to collect urine samples in cups and dip test strips carefully, then wait for lines or color changes. The learning curve and the potential for user error sometimes resulted in confusing or inconclusive outcomes. To address this, manufacturers developed midstream tests, sticks that could be held directly in the urine stream, simplifying the process and reducing handling errors. Later, digital pregnancy tests emerged, providing clear pregnant or not pregnant readouts on small screens. These digital displays minimized ambiguity, improved user confidence, and even allowed for the estimation of how many weeks had passed since conception. The psychological impact of these innovations cannot be overstated. For many women, the transition from interpreting faint lines to reading straightforward messages marked a reduction in anxiety and confusion during an already emotionally charged moment. The clarity of digital tests often gave reassurance, even though the underlying biology remained the same. Alongside technological leaps, pregnancy tests have played an increasingly significant role in cultural narratives. Advertisements for tests often emphasize themes of hope, joy, and new beginnings, but they also reflect societal expectations about motherhood and family. These messages can be empowering, but sometimes reinforce traditional gender roles or place pressure on women to conform to certain ideals. In literature, film, and television, the pregnancy test has become a potent symbol, a dramatic reveal that can change storylines, character arcs, and emotional landscapes in an instant. The moment a character holds up a test strip or watches the digital screen light up pregnant is often used to convey suspense, happiness, fear, or conflict, reflecting the real-life weight the test carries in people's lives. The test's prominence in media also influences public perceptions about pregnancy, fertility, and women's health. It has helped destigmatize conversations around reproductive issues, inviting more open dialogue. Yet at times, media portrayals can oversimplify or dramatize the experience, creating unrealistic expectations or reinforcing stereotypes. Ethical questions have also accompanied pregnancy testing's rise. As tests became faster and more accessible, concerns about privacy, consent, and the potential for coercion grew. For instance, in some situations, partners or family members have pressured women to take tests or reveal results against their will, raising questions about autonomy and respect. Additionally, the widespread availability of pregnancy tests has intersected with debates on abortion, contraception, and reproductive rights worldwide. Access to testing is often seen as foundational for informed decision-making, but political and religious opposition can restrict or complicate access in many regions. These challenges highlight how pregnancy testing is not merely a medical technology, but also a flashpoint in broader societal struggles. The science of pregnancy detection has also continued to push boundaries. Beyond simply confirming pregnancy, researchers now investigate biomarkers that might predict pregnancy complications, fetal health, or gestational age more accurately. Some labs are developing blood tests that could detect pregnancy even earlier than urine tests, possibly days after implantation, with potential applications in fertility treatments and prenatal care. This scientific frontier also includes non-invasive prenatal testing, NIPT, which uses maternal blood samples to screen for genetic abnormalities in the fetus. Although distinct from pregnancy tests, NIPT builds on the principle of detecting biological markers in a mother's fluids, demonstrating how the simple act of pregnancy detection has grown into a sophisticated field with far-reaching implications. The digital era has added yet another dimension. Smartphone-connected pregnancy tests and apps now help track cycles, fertility windows, and test results, offering personalized insights. These tools promise to enhance women's understanding of their reproductive health, though they raise important questions about data privacy, medical accuracy, and reliance on technology. Looking back, the journey from ancient methods to today's high-tech tests reveals the extraordinary human endeavor behind pregnancy detection. It is a story of perseverance, creativity, and the continual interplay between biology and culture. Each advance has not only brought scientific knowledge, but also challenged societal norms, ethics, and personal experiences. Pregnancy testing is a mirror reflecting humanity's relationship with life's beginnings, marked by hope, uncertainty, joy, and sometimes sorrow. It encapsulates the deep desire to understand and participate in one of the most profound biological processes, the creation of new life. And as science continues to innovate, pregnancy tests will likely become even more integrated into healthcare and daily living. Future developments may offer earlier detection, richer data about fetal and maternal health, and seamless integration with personalized medicine. But through all these changes, the fundamental question will remain the same, timeless and universal. Am I pregnant? This question, simple in form yet profound in meaning, continues to connect people across cultures and eras, reminding us of our shared humanity. From the strange rituals of ancient civilizations to the cutting-edge technologies of today, the pursuit of this answer has driven scientific discovery and shaped human experience in ways both intimate and expansive. In the end, pregnancy tests, are far more than diagnostic tools. They are symbols of life's mystery, markers of personal journeys, and testament to humanity's enduring quest to understand and celebrate the beginnings of life itself. Pregnancy testing, beyond being a scientific achievement, has profoundly influenced how individuals and societies perceive parenthood, gender roles, and personal identity. The ripple effects extend far beyond the medical realm, touching on psychological, social, and even philosophical questions about what it means to bring new life into the world. Historically, pregnancy was often a deeply communal event, announced publicly and tied to cultural rituals and expectations. The ability to confirm pregnancy privately shifted this dynamic, giving women more control over when and how to disclose such intimate information. This shift influenced not only family dynamics, but also women's sense of autonomy and selfhood. With early confirmation of pregnancy, women could make decisions with greater agency about their health, their bodies, and their futures. This autonomy dovetailed with broader movements for women's rights, including access to contraception and abortion. Pregnancy testing became a tool not just for biological detection, but for exercising reproductive freedom. On an individual level, the psychological impact of pregnancy testing is profound. For many, the test is a gateway to a new chapter filled with hope and anticipation. For others, it may bring anxiety, fear, or uncertainty, especially in unplanned or complicated pregnancies. The moment of truth, holding a test, waiting for the lines or the words, can be one of the most emotionally charged experiences a person faces. This emotional weight is reflected in the cultural prominence of pregnancy tests. In film and literature, the pregnancy test is often a pivotal plot device, a moment that changes everything. It symbolizes the intersection of science and human drama, certainty and doubt, joy and fear. The evolving technology behind pregnancy tests has also influenced medical practice. Early and accurate detection allows healthcare providers to offer timely prenatal care, improving outcomes for mothers and babies. It also enables early screening for conditions that might affect pregnancy, guiding interventions and support. Moreover, the scientific advances in pregnancy testing have opened doors to research in reproductive health, fertility treatments, and prenatal diagnostics. The hormone HCG, central to pregnancy detection, is also a marker in oncology and endocrinology, linking reproductive biology to broader medical fields. Ethical considerations continue to accompany pregnancy testing's development. Issues of consent, privacy, and access remain vital. The test's availability does not guarantee equitable access or freedom from coercion. In some societies, women may still face social or legal barriers in accessing tests or making decisions based on results. Furthermore, the intersection of pregnancy testing with technology, like digital apps and connected devices, raises new concerns about data security and the commercialization of personal health information. How this data is used, stored, and protected is a critical question in the digital age. Looking to the future, pregnancy testing is poised to integrate more deeply with personalized medicine. Advances in genomics and biotechnology may enable tests that provide more detailed information about fetal health, genetic risks, or pregnancy progression, all from non-invasive samples. These developments promise to revolutionize prenatal care, but also challenge existing ethical and social frameworks. In some, Pregnancy testing is more than a medical procedure. It is a cultural touchstone, a symbol of human curiosity, hope, and the profound mystery of life's beginnings. Its history reflects the interplay of science, society, and individual experience, a story that continues to evolve with each new technological leap. As we move forward, the challenge lies in ensuring that these advances serve all people equitably, respecting privacy and autonomy while expanding knowledge and care. The story of pregnancy testing reminds us that behind every scientific breakthrough are real lives and real emotions, complex, varied, and deeply human. The story of pregnancy testing is, at its heart, a deeply human one. While the science and technology behind detecting pregnancy have evolved dramatically over the past century, it is the personal experiences and cultural shifts that have truly defined the impact of these advancements. Across the world, the pregnancy test has become more than a medical tool. It is a symbol of hope, anxiety, empowerment, and sometimes heartbreak. Consider the experience of women in the early days of home pregnancy testing. Before the tests were widely available, confirming a pregnancy often meant visiting a doctor or clinic, waiting anxiously for results, and sometimes facing judgment or stigma. The introduction of the home test offered a revolutionary sense of privacy and control. Suddenly, women could learn about their pregnancies on their own terms, in the safety of their own homes. This shift fundamentally altered how people approached reproductive health and planning. Many women recount moments of holding their first pregnancy test, the nervous anticipation as they waited for the result. For some, the positive result was a joyous affirmation of new life and possibility. For others, it marked the beginning of a complex emotional journey filled with uncertainty and difficult decisions. The test was a tangible moment of transition, a small device that could change lives in an instant. These personal stories highlight how pregnancy testing has shaped identity and relationships. The confirmation of pregnancy often transforms a person's sense of self, shaping their role as a future parent, their relationships with partners and family, and their plans for the future. It is a moment that can redefine priorities, values, and hopes. Culturally, the pregnancy test has influenced how societies view fertility, motherhood, and gender roles. In many cultures, motherhood is highly valued, and the confirmation of pregnancy is a cause for celebration. In others, social norms and economic factors may complicate the experience, making early detection both a blessing and a burden. The commercialization of pregnancy tests has also played a role in shaping cultural perceptions. Advertising campaigns have long targeted women's hopes and fears around pregnancy, often using images of smiling mothers and happy families to promote their products. While these messages can be uplifting, they sometimes reinforce narrow ideas about motherhood and womanhood, overlooking the diverse experiences and choices women face. Moreover, the accessibility of pregnancy tests has empowered some women, but not all. Economic disparities, geographic location, and cultural barriers mean that access to reliable pregnancy testing is still uneven around the world. For many, the cost of tests, lack of availability, or social stigma continues to limit their ability to confirm pregnancy early and make informed choices. In recent decades, advances in technology have further transformed pregnancy testing. Digital tests with clear results have reduced confusion and anxiety. Smartphone apps that track menstrual cycles and ovulation help women understand their fertility windows and predict pregnancy with greater accuracy. These tools represent a convergence of biotechnology and digital innovation, expanding the possibilities for reproductive health management. However, the digital age also raises new challenges. Data privacy is a major concern, as sensitive information about reproductive health is collected and stored by apps and devices. Questions about who has access to this data, how it is used, and how it is protected remain critical. The commercialization of reproductive health data has ethical implications that society must grapple with as technology advances. On the scientific front, researchers continue to push the boundaries of what pregnancy testing can reveal. Beyond simple confirmation, future tests may provide detailed information about fetal health, genetic conditions, and pregnancy risks through non-invasive methods. This emerging field of personalized prenatal diagnostics promises to improve outcomes, but also raises questions about medical ethics, counseling, and informed consent. The evolution of pregnancy testing also reflects broader societal changes around reproductive rights and gender equality. The ability to confirm pregnancy early supports women's autonomy, enabling informed decisions about parenting, abortion, or fertility treatments. Yet, legal and political battles over reproductive rights continue in many countries, underscoring the complex interplay between technology, policy, and individual freedom. Personal narratives underscore the varied impact of pregnancy testing. For some women, early detection enabled timely prenatal care that improved their and their baby's health. For others, it provided the clarity needed to make difficult decisions about pregnancy continuation or termination. The test has been a source of empowerment, anxiety, relief, and sometimes heartbreak. In families, the moment of discovering pregnancy often initiates profound shifts. Partners and relatives respond with a range of emotions: joy, surprise, worry, or even resistance. Pregnancy tests serve as the first tangible confirmation of life's change, shaping family dynamics and future plans. Looking ahead, the future of pregnancy testing is intertwined with ongoing advancements in science, medicine, and technology. As research into reproductive biology deepens, new biomarkers and detection methods may emerge, enabling even earlier and more comprehensive pregnancy assessments. Integration with artificial intelligence and personalized medicine could offer tailored guidance and support for expectant mothers. Yet, with these innovations come responsibilities. Ensuring equitable access to advanced pregnancy testing technologies is essential to prevent widening disparities. Protecting privacy and informed consent must remain priorities in an increasingly digital and data-driven world. Balancing technological possibilities with ethical considerations will be key to supporting women's reproductive health and rights. In conclusion, the journey of pregnancy testing, from ancient animal experiments to modern digital devices, reflects a profound human quest to understand and participate in the creation of life. It is a story of scientific ingenuity, cultural transformation, and deeply personal experiences. The pregnancy test stands as a small but powerful symbol of hope, uncertainty, and the enduring mystery of life's beginnings. The transformation of pregnancy testing over the past century is more than a scientific or medical milestone. It's a window into the changing landscape of societal values, gender roles, and personal identity. As pregnancy tests moved from the domain of clinical laboratories and animal bioassays to the hands of individuals, they became catalysts for profound shifts in how pregnancy, family, and reproduction are understood and experienced. In earlier times, pregnancy was often a communal event tied closely to cultural rituals and social structures. Announcements of pregnancy were public and laden with expectations, pressures, and sometimes taboos. The ability to privately confirm pregnancy, especially with the advent of the home pregnancy test, allowed women to reclaim a sense of autonomy over their reproductive journeys. This privacy altered not only when and how women disclosed their pregnancies, but also their own relationships to their bodies and futures. For many, the moment a pregnancy test reveals its result is deeply personal, a turning point where hope, fear, anticipation, and uncertainty converge. The test becomes a silent witness to one of life's most profound transitions. Stories abound of women holding those small sticks, eyes fixed, hearts pounding, knowing that a few minutes will bring news that could alter the course of their lives forever. This deeply emotional experience highlights the role of pregnancy testing not merely as a medical procedure, but as a psychological and cultural event. It invites reflections on identity, becoming a parent, navigating societal expectations, and grappling with the realities of health, relationships, and personal choice. As pregnancy tests gained widespread use, their role expanded beyond individual experiences to shape broader cultural narratives. The test became a symbol of empowerment, especially amid the social changes of the 20th century, including the women's liberation movement and the push for reproductive rights. It symbolized knowledge and control, tools that women increasingly demanded and claimed. Yet this empowerment coexists with complex societal pressures and norms. Media and advertising often depict pregnancy testing as a joyous confirmation of motherhood, framing it within narratives of family and fulfillment. While uplifting for many, such portrayals can marginalize alternative experiences, those involving infertility, miscarriage, unplanned pregnancy, or choices not to parent. Commercialization of pregnancy testing has played a significant role in shaping these narratives. Companies have crafted marketing campaigns that appeal to emotion and identity, sometimes reinforcing traditional gender roles and sometimes challenging them. The pregnancy test, in this sense, became both a product and a cultural icon, embodying the intersection of science, commerce, and social meaning. Medical practice also evolved in response to these changes. As early detection became possible, healthcare providers adapted prenatal care and counseling to accommodate women who arrived, knowing their pregnancy status well before the first ultrasound or clinical confirmation. This shift allowed for earlier interventions, screening for complications, and tailored support, improving maternal and fetal outcomes. However, the rise of early pregnancy detection also brought new challenges. The detection of very early pregnancies, including chemical pregnancies that end in miscarriage before clinical recognition, introduced emotional and ethical complexities. Women faced the distress of positive tests followed by loss, a phenomenon that was often misunderstood or unacknowledged in medical and social contexts. Moreover, disparities in access to pregnancy testing persist globally. While home pregnancy tests are widely available in many countries, Cost, availability, and cultural barriers limit their use in others. Women in low-resource settings may lack timely access to tests, delaying prenatal care and increasing health risks. International health organizations continue to advocate for equitable access, recognizing early pregnancy detection as critical to maternal health and reproductive rights. In recent decades, technological innovation has continued apace. Digital pregnancy tests, smartphone apps, and fertility tracking tools have become part of a broader ecosystem of reproductive health technologies. These tools offer greater convenience and personalization, but also raise questions about data privacy, accuracy, and medical oversight. The integration of pregnancy testing with digital health tools reflects a larger trend toward personalized medicine, where individuals increasingly manage their health data and decisions with the aid of technology. This trend promises benefits, but requires careful attention to ethical concerns, especially as reproductive health data is particularly sensitive. Looking ahead, advances in biomedical research hold the promise of pregnancy tests that provide more than a binary answer. Future diagnostics may assess fetal health, genetic risks, and pregnancy viability at earlier stages, offering a more nuanced understanding of pregnancy progression. These developments could transform prenatal care, but also introduce complex decisions and ethical dilemmas. The societal implications of these future technologies are vast. They raise questions about how much information individuals want or need, how that information should be communicated, and how to support diverse reproductive choices. They also underscore the need for equitable access to ensure that technological progress benefits all people, not just those in privileged settings. Throughout these scientific and social transformations, the pregnancy test remains a deeply human instrument, small in size but immense in impact. It captures a moment of vulnerability and strength, of uncertainty and hope. It reflects the ongoing dialogue between biology and culture, between individual experience and societal norms. In this way, the story of pregnancy testing is emblematic of humanity's broader relationship with life's mysteries. It is a tale of curiosity, discovery, empowerment, and the enduring quest to understand and shape the beginnings of life. As we continue to innovate and reflect on these issues, the pregnancy test will remain a powerful symbol of that journey. The evolution of pregnancy testing stands as a remarkable testament to the intersection of science, culture, and personal experience, a journey marked by innovation and profound human impact. While the biological process of conception is universal and ancient, the ways humans have sought to detect and understand pregnancy have continually transformed, reflecting shifting knowledge, technologies, and social values. From the earliest experiments using frogs to modern digital devices, pregnancy tests have not only revealed the presence of new life, but also catalyzed changes in identity, relationships, and society. One of the most striking aspects of this history is how pregnancy testing embodies the tension between privacy and publicness. In many traditional societies, pregnancy was a communal affair, with announcements and celebrations involving extended families and communities. The advent of early private pregnancy testing technologies shifted this paradigm, allowing individuals, primarily women, to know their status in solitude. This privacy is powerful, granting control over when, how, and to whom the news is shared. But it can also bring isolation, as the bearer of this knowledge navigates complex emotions and decisions without immediate communal support. The psychological landscape of pregnancy detection is rich and varied. The moment of taking a test is often charged with anticipation and vulnerability. For some, a positive result is a source of unfiltered joy, a dream realized. For others, it can trigger fear, uncertainty, or grief, especially when pregnancies are unplanned or complicated by health or social factors. This emotional duality reflects the multifaceted meanings of pregnancy itself, a biological event intertwined with personal hopes, fears, and societal expectations. In literature and film, the pregnancy test often symbolizes a pivotal moment, a crossroads where life paths diverge. It encapsulates themes of transformation, responsibility, and identity. The test's outcome can propel stories of joy, struggle, or resilience, mirroring the complexities experienced by real people. This cultural representation reinforces the pregnancy test's role as more than a medical device. It is a cultural icon, charged with meaning and emotion. The commercialization and marketing of pregnancy tests have further shaped their cultural significance. Advertisements frequently portray the test as a joyous confirmation of motherhood, aligning with traditional narratives of family and fulfillment. However, these portrayals can sometimes marginalize those whose experiences don't fit this mold, such as women facing infertility, miscarriage, or those choosing not to parent. The marketing of pregnancy tests thus participates in broader societal conversations about gender roles and reproductive expectations. Technological advances continue to redefine pregnancy testing. The transition from animal-based bioassays to immunoassays and then to digital readouts represents significant progress in accuracy, ease, and accessibility. More recently, the integration of pregnancy detection with fertility tracking apps and wearable health technology offers personalized insights into reproductive health. These innovations empower users with information, but also raise critical questions about data privacy, consent, and the commercialization of intimate health information. The ethical dimensions of pregnancy testing have grown more complex alongside technological progress. Early detection can improve maternal and fetal health by enabling timely care, yet it also introduces new dilemmas. The ability to detect very early pregnancies, including those unlikely to continue, challenges both patients and providers emotionally and ethically. How to counsel, support, and respect choices around such early findings remains an evolving area of medical practice and bioethics. Globally, disparities in access to pregnancy testing reflect broader inequalities in healthcare. In low-resource settings, the cost and availability of tests can delay confirmation and prenatal care, adversely affecting outcomes. Efforts by international organizations to improve access recognize the fundamental role of early pregnancy detection in reproductive rights and maternal health. Ensuring that technological advances benefit all people equitably is a continuing challenge and moral imperative. Looking forward, the future of pregnancy testing promises even greater integration with personalized medicine and genomics. Non-invasive prenatal tests that screen for genetic conditions are becoming more common, offering detailed information about fetal health early in pregnancy. While these tests provide valuable knowledge, they also raise important questions about how much information individuals want. the psychological impact of early genetic findings, and the ethical use of such data. The intersection of pregnancy, testing with digital health platforms adds further layers of complexity. Apps that track menstrual cycles, ovulation, and pregnancy symptoms generate vast amounts of personal data. How this data is stored, shared, and protected is crucial given the sensitivity of reproductive health information. Users must navigate the balance between the benefits of personalized insights and the risks of privacy breaches or commercial exploitation. Ultimately, pregnancy testing reflects the ongoing human quest to understand and engage with the mysteries of reproduction. It is a story of science advancing hand in hand with social change, reshaping identities and relationships. Each positive or negative test result carries with it a story of hope, fear, change, or acceptance that contributes to the rich tapestry of human experience. The small test strip or digital device, seemingly simple, encapsulates profound themes. The beginning of life, the assertion of autonomy, the navigation of uncertainty, and the negotiation between biology and culture. It is a tool that reveals not only the presence of pregnancy, but also the evolving dynamics of gender, power, and knowledge. As society moves forward, the challenge will be to ensure that the benefits of pregnancy testing and reproductive health technologies are accessible, ethical, and supportive of diverse experiences and choices. Balancing innovation with respect for privacy, equity, and individual autonomy will be essential. The history and future of pregnancy testing remind us that at the intersection of science and life lie deeply human stories. Stories of transformation, resilience, and hope. These stories continue to unfold with each new test taken, each new life beginning, and each new understanding gained. The journey of pregnancy testing is a remarkable saga that intertwines scientific discovery, cultural transformation, and deeply personal moments. As the technology has advanced, so too has its influence on how individuals and societies understand reproduction, parenthood, and identity. From the earliest biological experiments using frogs to the digital tests used today, pregnancy detection has evolved far beyond a mere medical procedure. It has become a mirror reflecting humanity's complex relationship with life's beginnings. Early pregnancy tests involving animals like frogs are often viewed today as curiosities from a bygone era. Yet these tests represented pioneering attempts to harness biology for practical diagnosis, laying the groundwork for modern immunoassays. The story of these frogs, how their behavior changed in response to pregnant women's urine, captured the imagination and demonstrated the possibilities of science to reveal the invisible processes of the human body. It was a breakthrough that connected natural observation with medical application, inspiring further innovation. The shift from animal bioassays to laboratory immunoassays marked a turning point. By detecting the hormone HCG with antibodies, these tests increased accuracy and reduced dependence on living animals. This scientific advance paved the way for the development of home pregnancy tests, which revolutionized reproductive health by putting power directly into the hands of women and families. Home pregnancy tests emerged at a time of social change, coinciding with movements for women's liberation and reproductive rights. The ability to privately confirm pregnancy became an act of autonomy, allowing women to make informed decisions about their bodies and futures. This empowerment challenged traditional norms that often placed reproductive control in the hands of others, be it doctors, partners, or societal expectations. The cultural impact of pregnancy testing is profound. The test is often one of the first tangible confirmations of new life, a moment charged with anticipation and emotion. Whether met with joy, fear, uncertainty, or sorrow, the result is a powerful symbol of transformation and responsibility. In popular culture, pregnancy tests frequently serve as dramatic plot devices, highlighting their emotional significance and social resonance. Advertising and marketing have shaped the test's cultural meanings as well. Campaigns often emphasize hope, family, and happiness, reinforcing conventional ideals about motherhood. While these messages resonate with many, they can obscure the diversity of experiences, such as those involving infertility, loss, or decisions, not to parent, that are equally valid and important. As technology advances, pregnancy testing continues to evolve. Digital tests now offer clearer results, reducing user confusion and anxiety. Fertility and menstrual tracking apps complement testing by helping users understand their reproductive cycles and better anticipate pregnancy. These innovations integrate biology with data, providing personalized health insights that empower users, but also raise concerns about privacy and data security. The ethical landscape surrounding pregnancy testing has grown more complex. Early detection improves health outcomes, but also introduces emotional and ethical challenges, particularly in detecting very early pregnancies or potential complications. Counseling and support services must adapt to address these nuanced realities, ensuring that individuals receive accurate information and compassionate care. Access to pregnancy testing remains uneven worldwide, reflecting broader health disparities. In resource-limited settings, lack of affordable and accessible testing can delay care and increase risks. Global health initiatives emphasize the importance of equitable access to support maternal and reproductive health, recognizing pregnancy testing as a critical step. Future developments in pregnancy testing promise to deepen understanding of pregnancy health and risks. Emerging technologies may provide detailed genetic and health information non-invasively, offering earlier and more comprehensive insights. While these advances hold great promise, they also prompt important questions about information management, counseling, and individual choice. The digital era introduces new challenges and opportunities. Mobile apps and connected devices generate extensive personal health data, necessitating robust privacy protections and ethical use policies. Balancing innovation with respect for individual rights is essential to ensure that reproductive technologies serve all users fairly and safely. At its core, pregnancy testing is more than a clinical act. It is a profoundly human experience, intertwined with hopes, fears, identities, and relationships. It symbolizes the beginning of a journey, whether toward parenthood, personal transformation, or difficult decision-making. Each test reflects a unique story shaped by individual circumstances and broader cultural contexts. As we continue to advance scientifically and socially, the story of pregnancy testing reminds us of the ongoing dialogue between biology, technology, and humanity. It challenges us to consider not only how we detect and interpret pregnancy, but also how we support those who live through its many possibilities. Ultimately, pregnancy testing stands as a small yet powerful emblem of life's mysteries and the human desire to understand, control, and celebrate beginnings. Its history and future are inseparable from the stories of people, real lives marked by complexity, resilience, and hope. Pregnancy testing is not just a technical achievement, it is a window into the evolving nature of human relationships, medical ethics, and cultural values. The act of detecting pregnancy carries with it layers of meaning that reflect the hopes, fears, and realities of individuals and communities around the world. Over time, pregnancy testing has influenced how we think about fertility, family, and identity, becoming intertwined with social change and technological innovation. Historically, pregnancy was often confirmed through observation of physical signs or traditional methods passed down through generations. These methods, while culturally significant, were imprecise and often left women in uncertainty for weeks after conception. The development of scientific pregnancy tests brought a new level of certainty, but also new responsibilities and emotional challenges. Suddenly, pregnancy could be confirmed very early, before many physical signs appeared, creating a shift in how pregnancies were experienced and managed. This early confirmation introduced the possibility of earlier decision-making, both in terms of medical care and personal choice. For many women, knowing about pregnancy in its earliest stages allowed for better health outcomes through timely prenatal care. For others, it offered a crucial window for making decisions about continuation or termination of pregnancy. The power to know early has therefore been both a blessing and a source of difficult emotions, underscoring the complex nature of reproductive autonomy. The cultural dimensions of pregnancy testing are profound. The test is often seen as a rite of passage, a moment that marks the transition into new roles and identities. Whether welcomed or feared, pregnancy fundamentally reshapes how individuals see themselves and their relationships. The anticipation of the test result can be a moment of intense vulnerability, as it represents both the possibility of new life and the weight of responsibility. Marketing and media have played a significant role in shaping public perceptions of pregnancy testing. Advertisements often focus on themes of joy, family, and new beginnings, portraying pregnancy tests as gateways to happiness and fulfillment. These narratives can be uplifting but may also gloss over the diversity of experiences surrounding pregnancy, including challenges like infertility, miscarriage, or complex personal decisions. Technology has continued to advance pregnancy testing in ways that improve accessibility, accuracy, and user experience. Modern digital tests reduce ambiguity with clear pregnant or not pregnant readouts, and apps offer users tools to track fertility and reproductive health. These developments represent the merging of biotechnology with digital innovation, enabling more personalized and informed reproductive health management. However, these advances also bring concerns about data security and privacy. Fertility and pregnancy-related apps collect sensitive health information that, if misused or inadequately protected, could have serious implications for users. The commercialization of reproductive health data raises ethical questions about consent, ownership, and the potential for discrimination. The ethical and emotional complexities of pregnancy testing continue to evolve alongside scientific progress. Early detection can reveal pregnancies at stages when viability is uncertain, leading to difficult decisions and emotional distress. Medical professionals and counselors face the challenge of supporting individuals through these uncertainties with empathy and accurate information. Globally, access to pregnancy testing remains unequal. Socioeconomic factors, geographic location, and cultural stigma influence who can access reliable and affordable tests. International health efforts emphasize the importance of expanding access to ensure all individuals can benefit from early pregnancy detection as part of comprehensive reproductive health care. Future innovations promise to deepen the capabilities of pregnancy testing. Non-invasive prenatal diagnostics may soon provide detailed insights into fetal health and genetic conditions early in pregnancy. These advances hold potential to improve outcomes, but also raise questions about how to handle complex information and support informed decision-making. As pregnancy testing technologies integrate further with digital health platforms, ensuring ethical practices and protecting privacy will be paramount. The balance between technological empowerment and safeguarding individual rights will shape the future landscape of reproductive health. At its core, pregnancy testing is a profound intersection of biology, technology, and human experience. It reflects the ongoing quest to understand life's beginnings and navigate the complexities that come with new potential life. Each test carries stories of hope, anxiety, transformation, and resilience, illustrating the deeply personal and societal dimensions of reproduction. The journey of pregnancy testing, from frogs to digital apps, encapsulates humanity's evolving relationship with fertility and parenthood. It reveals how science and culture interact to shape identities, choices, and futures. As we continue to advance, the test remains a small yet powerful symbol of life's mysteries and the human desire for knowledge and control. The story of pregnancy testing is ultimately a story about humanity's ongoing quest to bridge the gap between the invisible processes of life and the tangible world of experience and knowledge. From the humble beginnings, with live frogs responding, to hormone signals, to the sleek digital tests that fit in the palm of a hand, pregnancy detection technologies have charted a remarkable course through science, culture, and personal narrative. Each stage in this journey reflects broader changes in medicine, technology, social values, and the very way people understand themselves and their relationships. Pregnancy testing has empowered countless individuals by granting earlier and more private access to knowledge about their own bodies. This empowerment has been a catalyst for social change, challenging traditional power dynamics and expanding reproductive autonomy. Women in particular have gained the ability to take control of their reproductive journeys in unprecedented ways, navigating choices with information that was once inaccessible or controlled by medical authorities. At the same time, the evolving science and technology of pregnancy testing highlight ongoing ethical and emotional complexities. Early detection brings benefits, but it also introduces new challenges, from managing the emotional impact of very early pregnancy loss to grappling with complex information about fetal health and genetic risks. These challenges require compassionate support systems and careful ethical frameworks that respect diverse experiences and decisions. The cultural significance of pregnancy testing remains profound. It symbolizes transition, potential, and change, often carrying a deep emotional weight. The moment of taking a pregnancy test is a unique intersection of hope, fear, anticipation, and reflection. It is a personal moment that resonates widely, reflected in art, literature, and media, making the pregnancy test an enduring cultural icon. Technological innovation continues to drive pregnancy testing forward, integrating with digital health platforms, wearable devices, and personalized medicine. These advances promise greater convenience, accuracy, and insight, but also demand vigilance around data privacy, consent, and equitable access. As the tools evolve, society must ensure that their benefits are shared broadly and that ethical considerations guide their development and use. Global disparities in access remind us that the journey is not complete. For many, the ability to know early about pregnancy is still out of reach due to economic, geographic, or social barriers. Efforts to expand access to reliable, affordable pregnancy testing are critical to promoting health equity and reproductive rights worldwide. Looking to the future, pregnancy testing may become part of a comprehensive reproductive health ecosystem, one that not only confirms pregnancy but also monitors fetal development, screens for conditions, and supports informed decision-making. This holistic approach will require collaboration among scientists, healthcare providers, ethicists, and communities to balance innovation with respect for individual rights and diverse values. Ultimately, the pregnancy test is a small device with a profound impact. It encapsulates the intersection of biology, technology, emotion, and society, reminding us that science is not just about facts and figures, but about the lived experiences of people. It stands as a testament to human curiosity, ingenuity, and the desire for understanding and control over life's most intimate moments. As the story of pregnancy testing continues to unfold, it invites us to reflect on the nature of life, the power of knowledge, and the ongoing journey toward autonomy, compassion, and equity in reproductive health. It is a story of science serving humanity, and humanity shaping science in return, a story that will keep evolving with each new generation and each new life. Hey everyone, thanks so much for hanging out and diving deep into this incredible story about how frogs help doctors discover pregnancy and how that journey has shaped the way we understand new life today. If you enjoyed this ride through history, science, and culture, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on our awesome stories and deep dives. Stay curious, stay awesome, and I'll catch you in the next one.